Everyone, okay if I take a photo? Cool. Great, so there's my contact information. Please feel free to contact me any reason, anytime. I'm totally happy to help anyone I can, any way I can. And I don't really like conventional wisdom. I think it's really important that we learn from other people's past experience, but in order to live a life that you feel is way worthwhile, I think it's really important that you do things that you feel and know is the way you need to do them. And I want to talk about hackerspaces and entrepreneurship. They kind of go together, but they're kind of different in lots of different important ways. But if you're going to be a good entrepreneur, you definitely need to learn from people's past experience, and you definitely need to do what you feel is what is the right thing to do. So conventional wisdom doesn't really make it. And by using not conventional wisdom, I was able to create work that I really love. And I think it's really important for all of us to find ways of living that you feel is really good for you. Because we spend a third of every day, which means a third of our life, working. And if you don't like what you're doing for your work, that's a third of your life you don't like. And we sleep a third of the day, which means a third of our life, and we're going to dream about what we did during the day. And if you don't like what you did during the day, then you're going to dream about that, and that means we're having 2/3 of our life that we don't like. And if you're like the average American who watches 6.5 hours of TV every day, when have you had time to even explore, let alone do things that you feel are personally relevant for you, living a life, hopefully, that you really want to live? But I did find a way to love the work that I do. It took a while because I lived the first half of my life being totally depressed, brutally bullied, targeted by these people, bullies, for being an introverted geek, for being fat, for being gay, for being bad at sports, and all the things that bullies seem to not like. And often as teachers watched, and my parents were clueless, so my life was hell, and I used to try to escape by watching TV. And I'm talking about this because it really leads to why I do what I do, because it's personally relevant for me, personally meaningful for me. And by watching TV every day, my problems seemed to go away until the end of the show. But then there was another show, and then that show ended. But then there was another show, and then that show ended. Anyways, I kept doing this, and time went away. I didn't do anything good for me. I didn't learn how to deal with other kids. I just ate junk food, got fatter, only to be more of a target at school, only to be more of wanting to escape it at home. And that's called addiction. And that lasted for years and years, and life went away for me, and it took a long time, but eventually I realized that I could quit, and I did, and I got rid of the TV at home, and eventually learned that I could do all these really cool, geeky things, and I eventually learned that I could get paid to do those geeky things by helping lots of small companies. And how I went along that path is a long story that I don't have really time for today. But if you're interested, I'm totally happy to share, and it's one of the ways I love helping people, because I think that there's a lot of us who've dealt with depression in our lives. But by helping other companies, I was doing lots of interesting things, including like creating virtual reality back in the mid-1980s, and I don't really have time to talk about that today either. But the one thing that I noticed is that all of these projects that I was doing, as interesting as they weren't really exciting to me. They weren't the kind of things that made me jump out of bed in the morning wondering how to solve all the problems I needed to solve and excited about it and passionate about it. It wasn't that. So I wanted to really find out what life would be like if every day were like that. Every day was full of things, choosing what I loved to do rather than just getting up to go to work so I can get a paycheck. So I told myself I would only take work if I loved it. I quit doing anything else, and for a year, I gave myself a year to see if I could find ways of making a living doing only what I loved. Well, no work came along that I loved. But I did have a lot of time, so I started doing all these projects that I had only been thinking about, because when I worked in electronics, I didn't really want to come home and play with electronics. And one of the projects that I started doing was TV Be Gone, which is a keychain that turns off TVs in public places. Because I got rid of TV at home, but when they were popping up all over in public places, I couldn't do anything about that, but I could figure out a way, and I did, to turn them all off, so I did. I'm a geek. And I really became passionate about it. It was a lot more difficult to do this project than I thought, and it took about a year to make it all happen, but I was obsessed. It was actually obsessed. I really wanted to turn TVs off in public places, and I finally got it working after a year, and I went all over San Francisco where I live, turning TVs off everywhere I saw one, and really loving it. And all my friends seemed to love it too, so I made one for all of my friends, and they showed their friends, and they seemed to want it too, and many of those friends talked about it to their other friends, and then I saw an opportunity. From a project that I did for me out of love, a project that's personally relevant for me turned into an opportunity, and I made as many as I could afford, and this was a big gamble, which was 20,000 of them, but I knew that if I could sell 5,000 by doing the math, I could break even. And even if it took more than like 5 years or whatever, I wouldn't care, because then there'd be 5,000 people turning TVs off all over the world, and I thought that would be pretty cool. But I was wrong. I did not sell 5,000 in 5 years. I sold 20,000 in 3 weeks. The first day of sales was so popular that my website crashed, and the New York Times called me, and National Public Radio in the US called me, and CNN and Fox News and BBC and Deutsche Welle, and on and on and on, and it changed my life forever for the positive. And I've been making a living with a sustainable small company for 12 years. And 12 of my friends are also helping me. They've been making a living doing this. And all because I was willing to make time to explore and do something that was personally meaningful for me. There's no guarantees in any of this, but it did fulfill my definition of success. Doing what I love, I get to enough of what I need to keep doing what I love. By doing that, I got invited to my first hacker conference, which changed my life forever, again for the positive, because it's full of people doing what they love and enthusiastically sharing and learning from each other. And that brought me to my third conference, because I was really waiting for more conferences, because if the conference ends, I had to go back into the world where people don't seem to do what they love doing. And the next conference was really exciting, and this one in particular had a talk about how to start your own hackerspace. And I thought, wow, if I had my own hackerspace at home, then I could not have to wait till the next hacker conference to be surrounded by people supporting each other and exploring and doing things that were really cool. So I did. I started Noisebridge with some friends, and other people started other hackerspaces, and within a year there were 100 hackerspaces, and within a year after that there were 500, within a year after that there were 1,000. We started a movement. And again, it was just from taking time to explore and do what we found personally meaningful. I started teaching soldering, which I love, and I was doing that all day here, if maybe you noticed, making blinky lights. And it's fun. It doesn't matter what we do. I mean, we're just learning to solder, but people enjoy coming together to do something they think they might enjoy in a community, and we need community in our lives. And we don't really have enough of it. But anyways, that got me to go around helping other hackerspaces, because all hackerspaces around the world, they're all unique, all started by individuals or small groups of people to have a community that's good for them. But we all help each other. And that's why it's grown so much, along with we need community, and we need creative expression in our lives. And hackerspaces do all of this. So I started going to hackerspaces, doing workshops, helping hackerspaces get going, giving talks, and getting invited to more things, and going to China to do my manufacturing for TV Be Gone. And eventually word gets all the way up, giving talks in China, to the top of government, where the premier of China last year visited a hackerspace and called it the future of China, for economy, for education. It's kind of crazy. I mean, just going to China, talking about hackerspaces, and the head of government starts talking about it. How do these things happen? Again, it's just because I made time to explore and then do more and more of what I really love doing, and it seems to be contagious. So I kind of recommend doing that. Hackerspaces, I think, are fantastic. They're really about community. They have all sorts of amazing things. It involves all this stuff, but they're physical places. Imagine if there was a place, and there is, right here in Rio, there's several of them, where you can go to get things like this, what you're experiencing today, every day, all night, all year round. And people do come together and have tools, because people like making things, but it's not about the tools, although the tools are very cool, like this place does mechanics. But it's all about hacking, which is a way of looking at things, a way of living, a way of like being part of the world. We see resources. The world is full of resources. We can use them any way we want to make our projects better, and we can share what works and what doesn't work. And we do this because it's incredibly enjoyable. That's what hacking is. It's a way of living, a way of being. It's also the key for being a good entrepreneur. An entrepreneur doesn't have to be a hacker, but to be a good entrepreneur, you do have to be a hacker. You have to see the world that way. Anything can be hacked, not just electronics, as we usually think of it, but art and craft, science, anything, ourselves, our communities, the planet. The planet needs hacking because the planet needs to be improved. We can and should hack everything. And from this process, we find opportunities. Hackerspaces do have a lot of tools. I'll just run through a few, like all sorts of things, including like at Noisebridge, we have art classes, and there's cooking, like this one in Stuttgart. There's for all ages. We can learn and share, no matter how old or how young we are. And they're fantastic learning environments because when we find a project we like, we're motivated to learn all we can to make our projects awesome, which is why more and more this kind of thing is being used in schools and universities. Mainly, it's a community that supports each and every one of us to explore and do what we love doing. We can do that on our own, but we can do it so much better with community. And this is where true innovation happens. Actual innovation, not just a buzzword for marketing, but actual innovation, coming up with unique ideas that are perfect for us and perfect for our surrounding communities. And from there, that's when we find opportunities. Hackerspaces have grown so much because of all of this. There's a lot of hackerspaces in the world, and they're full of opportunities. They're full of communities. I want to go back to that one. I was just hacker in residence in China at what's considered the best university there, because they want people to come there to help people there do more of this. Yeah, there's a lot of hackerspaces now in China because the head of government said it's the future, and so they're opening up lots of them. And here's just a few more pictures. You can see people are happy when they come together. These are just workshops I've done with soldering. Again, it doesn't matter what you're doing, as long as you're doing something in a community where people think they'll enjoy it, and they do enjoy it. There's also hackerspaces here. I was here 3 years ago in Brazil, down south at Garoa Hackerspace, teaching people soldering. That's what I do. There's a lot of hackerspaces in the world, including lots in Brazil, and there's room for a lot more. A lot of governments are pushing for hackerspaces now because they see how much opportunities it opens up for people, but they're opening spaces that look like this. That's not a hackerspace. We need places that look like this so that more people can have opportunities to grow. Once they have an idea for something cool, if they want to, then they can start a startup and fill up places that look like this with things that look like this and have companies, and that's what co-working spaces are for. And there's also incubators and accelerators for people to be trained specifically for things. We want this, we really do. Entrepreneurship requires things in this order and this order only. You have to explore, you have to try, you have to fail, you have to try again and fail again. It's a roller coaster, there's ups, there's downs. Eventually you find something you like and maybe it works, others love it too, and then you have an opportunity and then there's a possibility for doing something cool. Not only Brazil, but the world needs more of this, and that's why I do what I do. Everywhere, in schools and universities and communities, incubators, accelerators, whatever. We need more of this. We need hackerspaces so that more people have these opportunities. I'm kind of out of time. There's a lot of cool projects that have come from hackerspaces that people did only because they enjoy it, but that give people a living now, like this building turned into a display. Back in 2005 when this happened, it was kind of mind-blowing. Now you just see it all over the place. But it's because of these people that it happens. Space exploration is happening not only at SpaceX, but it's growing out of hackerspaces, and even a project to put a hacker on the moon. Who knows what we'll learn from all of this? There's huge robots. This one's more than 10 meters high. And projects for helping when there's disasters like in Fukushima, measuring radiation. Doing DIY bio is happening all over the world, and they're making really cheap things that were normally tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars. And computer games, teaching people how to make more games. This happens at Noisebridge. This weird thing in Japan that just one thing leads to another and another. It's called a Rube Goldberg machine, and this leads people to make a living doing amazingly huge art projects for rock and roll shows in Japan and the rest of the world. I don't have time to talk about all these things. Everyone's heard of 3D printers. It came from one person at one hackerspace obsessed about making a 3D printer, which turned into the first cheap 3D printer company, which sold for hundreds of millions of dollars last year. And drones also came from hackerspaces. They were called microcopters. A bunch of German hackers thought it would be cool to make a flying machine. So anyways, I'm out of time. I want to just say hackerspaces are something I'm passionate about, and if you want to start one, there's a world of people wanting to help you do it. So this creates more opportunities for more people to do all sorts of amazing things in your life, in your community's life, in our life, and for the planet. And if you think I can help in any way, please contact me.